Okay, hello everybody. This time the tutorial is looking at materials of requirements planning. Now you may have noticed that when you did these problems in class that the calculations involved are very repetitive and monotonous. And it's this very fact that makes it an excellent candidate for automation. So what we're doing in this tutorial is actually setting up a spreadsheet which will solve a simple MRP problem for us. And that means then that any changes we make to the data, perhaps the demand in a certain week will increase quite dramatically. That means that these changes can then be automatically reflected and updated in the spreadsheet and in the MRP output tables, rather than having to go through and make all the changes manually ourselves. So what the spreadsheet needs to do is it needs to keep track of the gross requirements for the item up here, scheduled receipts, lead times for each component, the beginning inventory for each component, the lot size rules for each component, and the BOM or the product structure for each for the unit of output. Now, based on the feedback from you guys on a previous tutorial, I've tried to simplify how you read this table. So, to get one unit of output up here, one unit of A is made up of 2 units of subassembly B and 2 units of subassembly C. One unit of subassembly C is made up of 1 unit of subassembly D and 3 units of subassembly E. Now the spreadsheet can be enlarged if you need to work with a larger problem. That goes beyond a little bit beyond the scope of what we're going to do here today, but it can be done reasonably easily if you just spend a bit of time understanding what's going on. Okay, now what we've done for you in the interest of saving time is we've kept these MRP output tables here. You'll see they're all basically the same with the exception of the item letter changing on each table. So we have MRP output tables for items A through E. Now the first thing that we're going to do is just work with item A, and once we've got the calculations in there, we'll be able to basically cut and paste that and make a few minor changes here and there, and then you can just bring that down and cut and paste it into the other MRP output tables. So first of all, we're going to go to cell C21 here, and what we're going to do in these cells, here is get information from this table. So we're saying that basically looking at the breakdown here, so item A is however many, item A is not going to require anything basically from that table. Looking across here, item A doesn't require anything. So when we go to produce an item A, it becomes more important further down here. So when we have something, just looking at the figure 1 on the instructions, so item C, for example, there's going to be entries in here which become important. And that's going to be used to calculate these gross requirements based on earlier items. So now, let's go back to cell C21. Now we're going to use the VLOOKUP function. Now we've already used this, so we should be reasonably familiar with it. And we're going to look up this value here. And I'm going to use an absolute reference on that table. Now you'll see here for the B21 I've used an absolute reference only on the B. And I'm going to be pulling that across to fill in these other ones, BX, CX and DX. Now because I'm going to be cutting and pasting, I want to use an absolute reference on this a reference to the table here, so that when I cut and paste it, it will still be fixed onto that reference. Now I want to refer to the second column here. And I put that in there like that, and it doesn't have anything. Now we're just going to drag that across there. Now I haven't set this up as well as I could have, and we have to change this each time to move across each column. So on this last one, DX, the column index number changes to 5. And that means we're looking down the fifth column, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's returning the entry from that cell. And for each of these it's nothing, which is what we expect. Item A is at the very top of the tree. Now, next one is the lead time, and again, I suppose not unsurprisingly perhaps, we're going to use the VLOOKUP function. Now we're going to be looking up this value. Now I'm going to use a relative reference, and when we cut and paste this down, it's going to refer to the cell on the same output table that we're working with. And the table array this time is going to be up here. And again, we want an absolute reference to that table. Now the column index number is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row for lead time, and close brackets and enter. So the lead time, it says for item A is 2. If we look up here, down the first column, item A, you move across to the 5th column, it is indeed an entry of 2, which is what we want. The lot rule, very much the same sort of thing, because of VLOOKUP. Lookup value is again item A, the same table there, absolute reference. This time we're going to look up 1, 2, 3, 4th column for the lot rules, and it's 1, which is what we expect. Fabulous. Now for item number A, the gross requirements are just going to be read directly from this customer demand for item A table here. Like so. And that's going to change for the other items though. Just going to zoom out a little bit so you can see a bit more. Now, the scheduled receipts for each item, again going to be found using the VLOOKUP function. So we look up item code A, and we will make an absolute reference to that column because we're going to be dragging this formula over here, so we always want to lock it on there as we do so. The table array will be there like that. The col index number will be the current period that we're on, plus 1. And the reason for that is, in this column we want the returned value from the first period here, but we've got to remember the first column of this table is this column here, so we want to return a number from the second column. So in this case it is week 1 plus 1. Now if we just close the bracket like that, and we put it across there like that, obviously we've done something a little bit wrong. And you can see there what's happened is I did not put an absolute reference on that table. So I'm just going to go Control Z and remove that, I'm going to hit F4, referring to the table, so we have an absolute reference to that table. Now I'm just going to drag it across there like that. And I'm looking there and it's taking the same information and it's returning nothing because there's nothing in there. So if I make a change here on cell 8 and put the number 7 in for the scheduled receipt, we see the VLOOKUP functions return the correct number. Now that's just a demonstration and now I'll delete it. Right, now the projected stock balance is probably the most important line in this spreadsheet, and it's also probably, I think, the most complicated line. And again, we're going to use the VLOOKUP function. Now on J24, the projected stock balance is going to be equal to big long formula. Now I'm just going to go ahead and type that formula in. So we're going to use an if function. So we're finding out if the stock from last week plus the scheduled receipts is greater than the requirements for this week, then the projected stock balance will be the amount of stock that we had available minus the requirements for that week. We actually had enough stock to meet demand. And if that wasn't the case, what we needed to do obviously was receive a new order, and that would have been given by the actual order receipt minus the net requirements, and that will give us then the amount of stock left over at the end of the period. Now just for now that's going to be 0, and once we start getting some numbers in the rest of the equations in, it'll make more sense and the numbers will start to sort of come alive. Now in week 0 it's slightly different. We're just going to use the VLOOKUP function. For item A, in this table here, the inventory information table, we're going to use an absolute reference to that table, so when we cut and paste it, it'll be fine. Beginning inventory is 1 to 3rd column, close brackets there like that, so it's 50. Now, I'm just going to play with some numbers here, so don't do this on your one. But say if the gross requirements were 100, so in week 7, and the previous projected stock balance was 70, and there are no scheduled receipts, then we're going to need to have some stock coming in. And because we didn't have any stock coming in, it's currently 0. But if we had projected stock balance is 100 and there was a gross requirement for 70, obviously we'd have 30 left over. Because we had 100 stock, we subtract 70 from that, we have 30 remaining. I've just undone those changes. Now moving down to the net requirements. Cell J25, again we're using an if function. So what we're saying here is if the gross requirement is greater than the stock from last week plus scheduled receipts for this week, then this value is going to be greater than 0, not less than 0. Now if we don't have enough, if we have enough stock, sorry, this value is going to be less than 0 overall. because that's what happens if we have more stock from last week and received this week. Then for the gross requirements this will become true, it will be less than 0. And if that happens, we want to put 0 here. We don't actually need any more stock because we already have enough. If it's false, if we don't have enough stock, if the amount of stock we have on hand is less than these gross requirements, this value will be greater than 0. So in that case, the if statement becomes false. And in this case, the net requirements are going to be this. So we're saying, if that's not the case, obviously we need to, the net requirements are going to be the difference between what the gross requirements is and the amount of stock that we actually have available. Now we're just going to drag that across. You'll see it's all been relative references up until now as well. Now the number of lots. Now this is not something that you're going to find in the examples that we went through in class and in the course book. What we're doing here is we need to add this in because we're working with this with a spreadsheet, so it needs to work out what batch size, what lot size rules we're using. So what we need now is another if statement. Now we're going to do an absolute reference only on with the $ before the H because we're going to drag it across here and we still want it locked onto that cell. So if that is equal to 1, then our number of lots required will just be equal to the actual net requirements. So if we're using a 1-for-1 lot sizing rule, then obviously the number of lots we need are just equal to the net requirements. If we're not using a lot size of 1, then we're going to use the round up function, and we're going to take our net requirements, we're going to divide that by the lot sizing rule, and again we're going to use F4, so there's a $ and absolute reference on the H only. We're going to round it into 0 decimal places, and we're going to plug that in like so. And drag it across. So the planned order receipt is going to be calculating how many orders are received. So here in J27 we type in equals H21, and again absolute reference on the H, multiplied by the number of lots. Now the planned order release, we're going to use a slightly different function this time. We see here we have a lead time of 2, so we know to receive 60 units in this period you have to go back to that period there and release, have a planned order release for 60 units in that period. Now we're going to achieve this using what's known as the offset function, and you see here Excel's telling us that this returns a reference to a range that is a given number of rows and columns away. So we're going to plug it in, it wants a reference. We're going to refer to this cell here that we're currently on, J28. And we want to go -1 rows. And -1 means we're going up 1 row. And we want to go to the right by a certain number of rows, to the right by a certain number of columns, and that's given by the lead time. So we're saying that we want to put into this current cell a number that is up 1 row and across 2 rows, because across 2 columns to the right because of the lead time, so 2 columns to the right. Enter. Now obviously that was this cell, there's a 0 in there and it returned it. Okay, and you see what I did is I didn't put the absolute reference in. So again, you need to put the absolute reference in there for the locking into this cell here, only on the G. Hit enter, and when we pull this across, it should come up with a 60, because it's saying we need to release the order in this period so we can get the scheduled receipt in that period. Okay. Now we're just going to read this table quickly. So in week number 3 here, there's gross requirements of 50. We had 50 stock available, so we have no stock available at the end of that period. Week 4, we needed 60 units. We had no stock available, so we had a net requirement of 60 lots because of a 1-to-1 lot rule. Planned order release receipt was for 60 units, and that's reflected down here in the planned order release. And at the end of that, we have no stock remaining, which is exactly what we want. So this seems to be working quite nicely now. So that's the first MRP output table. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click here and C21 and select everything down there to Q28. Can hit Control C to copy it. And we're going to move down here to C31 and press Control V to copy. Now, the lead times, the lot rules and the scheduled receipts will be automatically updated, but the gross requirements will need to be adjusted because they're not actually read from the gross requirements table, the customer demand for item A. Instead, for item B, they're going to be based on the actual planned order releases here. So we need to just change that. So J32 equals C31 there, and we're going to do an absolute reference on the C, so lock it into that column so we can drag it across, and we're going to multiply that by J28. So we're saying that if there's a planned order release, we actually need 2 units of B to make that one component. And we know this because of that entry there. Now we're just going to drag this across there and just quickly check it. So if we need 60 units in that period, the gross requirements for unit B become 120 because of the product structure tree. So that looks like 80 becomes 160. Fabulous. Now everything else there should be okay. And we'll just check to make sure that's working alright. Yep. It returns 2, nothing, nothing, nothing. So that's correct. Lead time of 1 is what we expect there for item B. Lot of all 200. If we check the table quickly to see how well it works, projected stock balance at the end of week 1 is 200. Week 2 we had demand for 120 units. 200 minus 120 means we have 80 units left over. Week 3 we have demand for 100 units, 80 units left over, so we need 20 more. That's we have to order 1 lot because 20 is a lot less than our lot roll of 200. So we have a planned order receipt of 200. The lead time was 1. Is that correct? Yes, lead time is 1. So the order goes through there. So that means that we received 200. We had 80 left over in stock. Subtract the 100 used from 280 total stock and we get left to the 180. So that seems to be working. Alright, now we just select roughly the same part of the table again from C31 to Q38. Copy it. Click on C41 and hit Control V for paste. And you should see that it's still working nicely. Item C we look back at the table, the product structure tree, item C, there's 2 items C for 1 unit of A. So what we do need to do here is change the gross requirements for item C are going to refer to table A. What they're doing currently is if we click on this equation, we can see they're actually referring to item B. So what we're going to do is we're just going to move that up there to there, like that, and I'm just going to drag that formula over there. So now we're taking the planned order release for item A, multiplying it by 2. Is this correct? 60 units there in week 2 for item A, multiplied by 2 will give us 120 units for item C. So that looks correct. So it seems to be working well. Lead time of 1, lot size rule of 100. Lead time of 1, lot size rule of 100. We can see that the lot size rule seems to be working properly. Now we do the same sort of thing again. Select C41 to Q48, copy it, click on C51, paste it. Now we have to take the gross requirements again. So in J52 here we want this to be referring to E51. So D is needed to make item C, and this J38 needs to be changed so it points at table C. So it should be like that. E51 to J48. Enter, and we'll just pull that across there. Is that correct? 1 to 1. So 100 units there means a gross requirement of 100 there. That looks good to me. And again, we select these cells like that. I can check Control C for cell C51 to Q68. So 58. And select cell C61 and press Control V for copy. Now again, gross requirements have to be changed, so selecting cell J62, that needs to refer to C again, and we need to change this up to the planned order release in table C, like so. And we can just drag that along there like that, and it's done. So now the spreadsheet works nicely. Now, as I said, we can expand this to go beyond that, and we can make it more complicated. So gross requirements for E might depend on planned order releases for more than one item. And if that was the case, we'd just then go plus whatever. Maybe it was 1B, and then we'd go refer to that cell, multiply it by planned order release here for item B for that week. So it can be expanded reasonably easily. Another thing you might want to do is just use the freeze planes as suggested in the instructions, just to make it easier to figure out or navigate around the spreadsheet. So I think that should be reasonably straightforward. And now, as I said, now it's in a spreadsheet. Every time you make a change up here, maybe change that to 120 in week 6, that makes a change, and you'll see all this information in the spreadsheet changes. So I'm just going to move down to the spreadsheet, so just keep your eyes on this, and I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that change now, and you see those numbers change. So if you change it back to 120, we see those numbers change. Control Z to undo, we see the numbers change back. So those calculations now that you find repetitive and boring in class can be automatically done by the spreadsheet. So I hope you find this useful, and I hope you enjoyed it and you learnt something as well. So, take care of yourselves and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.